Evening and welcome back to GETI's Live Talk, hashtag Disruptive Education. This hashtag Disruptive Education movement was started by our founder director Dr. Sunita Gandhi solely with the aim to disrupt education and provide platform to the educators, edupreneurs around the world to come to our platform and share their opinions, viewpoints, and innovative ideas. So, with continuing with this disruptive movement of education, we have a very lovely guest with us today, Miss Ayesha Parveen. She is the innovation coordinator at MSB Educational Institute, Kolkata. She holds an MBA degree in English literature with B.Ed from Calcutta University. She has over 10 years of teaching experience. She has been felicitated by Oswald Books for academic excellence. She has done several certificate courses and workshops from British Council India, Oxford Online Teacher Trainings, Speakers Institute, to name a few. She is a passionate and lifelong learner. She is committed towards continuous professional development. So, today Miss Aisha is here with us and she'll be speaking on the topic teaching English language and literature. So, over to you, ma'am. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much, Zainab ma'am, for the warm welcome. And I'm absolutely glad to be a part of GETI Global Disruptive Education Movement. It's a truly sincere and wonderful initiative by this GETI. Just one correction there, it's a master's in literature and not an MBA. Thank you so much with that. So shall we begin our session today? Just let me know if my screen is, my PPT is visible. Is
Yes,
it
ma'am.
visible, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. It
Thank
is
you so much.
visible. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Zainab ma'am. So we shall start now. I start with a very important. It is not a saying often found, but then rarely heard, but very true. There are many model teachers, but no one is perfect. There's a scope of growth in everyone, and a good teacher is a lifelong learner. With that thoughts, let me take you towards this first question, dear audience, and that is just for you to think upon, and that is, why do people learn an additional language? How many languages do you speak, including L1? L1 being your native language. And what do you consider are the benefits of being multilingual? A second or two for you to think upon this. And it is very usual that each one of us are aware of more than one language besides our native language. Let's find out what are the reasons that people learn an additional language. L2 goes on L3, L4. There are several reasons. It could be by choice or by necessity. You have some reasons to do that, or it is your own. People are lifelong learners, and so by choice they do learn that. Could be religious reasons, scriptures or in different languages, be it in Sanskrit or English or Hebrew or Arabic. So for religious reasons also people study different languages. There could also be official purposes of being into professions like a translator or so these are few reasons. There are several reasons, of course, but these are some of the few reasons why people could and they do learn an additional language apart from the L1 that is being their native language. Now let's come into English, and that is our session of today. English is often considered a global language. People often consider this as a lingua franca. Earlier, French was the lingua franca, or maybe Spanish along with that, and there are, of course, arguments. With at present, according to one survey, 350 million people they speak English as the first language, and around 430 million people they speak it as a second language. So we come to a conclusion that there are English speakers in almost most of the countries around the world. And so it is the lingua franca or the international language or a global language. So in future, we don't know what could be the international language. Could be Chinese, let's see. But at present, it is English, and it is such an important language for all of us. Coming to our topic of today's discussion, that is teaching English language and literature in classrooms. Let us find out what we teachers can do to make it alive, to make it successful, our English teaching of language and literature. We have to first understand that in order to teach literature successfully anywhere, we teachers have to be well prepared and have good understanding, a sound understanding of the literary text that we are teaching. That is the preparation side. Now, what about the pre teaching side? Pre teachings could be sharing with the students difficult words, some allusions or of Greek mythology, something that any cultural features that is there available in the text, you tell the students beforehand. Now there is also a factor that students read the text and they understand the meanings of the difficult words through the context. That is absolutely fine, but then giving them mythological concepts before that, if that is referred to and addressed in the text, that is so important because you would not have to stop in the middle of your text, in the middle of your class or your session, to take them back towards something, and that would digress the actual way of what you are doing, the purpose of what you're doing, and then 5 to 10 minutes will be lost in that. So pre-teaching is very useful. It also could serve as a background information to students about historical context, about the biography of the author that we all do, the society depicted in the story, or whichever text you are doing, a novel or a poem or play. So a pre-teaching serves a lot, serves the purpose, and takes us all those time of teaching the text where our concentration could be diverted to some other way. So that is why preparation and pre-teaching is so useful and necessary. The other thing that I want to talk and discuss today is the several activities and the reading strategies that we English teachers could take up in order to make our class a very successful class. There's one such activities, the blue one comes under reading strategies, and the yellow one come under the activities that we could take up. Now, whether when students are reading the text, we have to evoke responses from them. So there are certain responses like reader response, critical response. We'll deal into that one after the other. Reader response is something where students explore text in terms of their personal experience. Now we'll also be delving deep into this in some time. Let's see the questions, the strategies. Now, instead of waiting for the full text to end and then you give out questions and you ask your students for questions, what we could also do is have questions while reading. So maybe after a paragraph or a two, or wherever you find need there be of an important question to arise, you ask that, or you write that. You have several books like that, like Oxford Mulberry. I'm not here naming such, but then these are a few good ones that you could refer to, where they have questions in the while in the middle of the text, that checks the understanding of the students, and also the teacher is assured that the student is concentrating. And of course there is a list of questions at the end of every chapter in every book. So one, that reading strategy that we could take up. Under lesson activities, the other come is a critical response. Students give response. Now these are the activities that we can take up. We can ask students to give response about issue that is raised in the text, in the mode of debates. For example, if we have a story of an orphan girl or a maid, any burning issue or any issue that is there related with the text. You could talk about illiteracy of your country that you reside in. That could be raised in the form of debates. There could also be predictive responses that could be evoked from the students in the term of activities. So students anticipate and they think and tell you beforehand how the story or the text is going to end. They could predict that. They could also understand why things happen and predict what is going to come next. So when they are doing so, their thinking skill, you are building and developing their thinking skill. They're not stuck. They're constantly thinking while they are reading. Creative responses could also be evoked, and you could give students to write their own story and poem using the text that they are reading as a model. For example, if you're doing a particular genre story, so you could ask them to write a paragraph on that genre. For example, you're doing an imaginative or a realistic fiction or a sci-fi, that is a science fiction. You could ask them to just write one paragraph and not one big story, just one paragraph on science fiction. So you could see the features there. That is going to be their creative response after reading the text that they have read as a model. Now, when they are reading the text, students should also be told to visualize and form pictures in the mind of whichever character they are reading, that are the people and the places, that setting is so important. So when they read, now the setting could be imaginary or the setting could be real, whatever that be. Have students visualize that, and that is so important. If a child is not visualizing or imagining what is he or she reading in terms of people, places, or the actions, the event, then the story is not alive. It is just there in the textbook in prints. Once it is there in the imagination, they actually watch it like a movie. While they are reading, the movie is going on in their mind. Another such activity could be character responses. Students imagine and discuss the point of view in the story as seen through the eyes of the main character. And this changes the narrative angle. This is a little difficult, but it could also be taken up. For example, if you have a third person narrative in a story and the story is told in terms of he knocked on the doors and nobody opened the door, and then this line only is told by the main character who's been spoken about, and this character can say, I knocked on the doors but nobody opened them, rather they slammed on my face. So somewhere the feelings would be more stronger. These are the character responses and changing the narrative angle, a POV, that is point of view in a story. So these activities we could take up as we are doing our lesson or reading of the text. In the strategies form, students could be asked to form opinion about the characters as they read. There are several characters, great characters, evil characters, positive characters. Ask students to form opinion about characters as they read and form an idea. And later on, those could be discussed. And as they read, lastly, as a summarization, you could ask them to identify the key points that has happened. If it's an essay, a text is in the form of essay, you could ask for the key points. Or if it is the form of a story, you could ask them the sequence of events that has taken place in the story. Or to summarize in a nutshell, tell me what has happened in the story. So that could clarify their doubts, and even if someone has been away, would not know what is there in the story, and of course get back reading themselves later. So these are the various lesson activities and reading strategies which we could incorporate in our teaching of the literary texts. Now, this is the making connection that I was talking about here in reader response. In the first one, delving deep into this is making connections. Now, students can make connection with the text. There are basically three kinds of connections that a reader can make with the text. One is text to text, the other is text to self, and the third is text to world. This is done to use what you know to understand what you read. Everyone has a previous knowledge. Even a baby has a previous knowledge. No matter if you give a book in its hand, a baby, a child has a previous knowledge. So use what you know to understand what you are reading next. So how can a teacher make use of this making connection in the text, and how can she evoke responses and thinking, critical thinking in the mind of the students? And that is the very target of our today's session. How are we going to change the minds of the students, our learners, and how are we going to take those innovative steps? So we could ask students to have a text to self connection. And these are the few sample of questions that you could ask your students. What does the story remind you of? Can you relate to the characters in the story? Does anything in the story remind you of anything in your own life? If the students are able to answer this, and there are questions of the sort and the answers are lying there, this is a text to self connection. The second one, text to text connection, one book, another book. These questions could be written in a form of a chart or put up on the board for always, not just for one lesson. These are general questions that could be used for all the stories and all the lessons. So for text to text connections, you could ask, what does this remind you, this story remind you of in another book you have read? How is this text similar to other things you have read? And how is this text different from other things you have read? Similar, different. Does it remind you of something that you have read already in some other book? This is text to text connection. And the third is text to world connection. This is so necessary. What does this remind you of in the real world? Now, for literature, it is often considered as medicine and science, and these are things that are so practical, and that is why we art students and we English students, we are always termed as, you are always living in imagination, in a fantasy world, in the fantasy world, excuse me. But then, when we relate and remind ourselves of what is happening in the real world, with something that we are reading in our text, that is so necessary, because English is all about skills, and one a core skill is speaking skill. And when you are reminded of something that is happening in the real world and you can relate to that in the text, and that is relatable in the real world, you can speak about that, you can give your opinion, you can start an initiative, you can take an initiative for the change that GETI today is doing, Global Institute disruptive at this global disruptive education movement. So there is somebody who's taking an initiative. So when you use this text to world connection, you could also take such an initiative. How are events in this story that we are reading similar to the things that is happening in the real world? And you will find so many of them. No matter which class you are dealing with, no matter which book you are dealing with, there is always something happening in the world similar to that you are reading. How are events in the story different from things happen in the world? Now there is something similar. Now there is also something different. Dystopia and utopia. For example, the world that you're living in is dystopic. All wrong things are happening there. But the book that you're reading is utopia. Is on utopia. All the good things are there. So how the things are different, or how the things are similar from what you are reading? These are the text connections. This is a small illustration that has been put for you, for because always, as we say, a picture is always used for better understanding. Now let's see what we have next, and that is very important, that we always talk about, is English skill. When we are doing all this, making connection, lesson activities, reading strategies, what are we doing? We are developing and we are building the English skills in our students. These are the basic four skills we all know of: reading, listening, writing, speaking. Very general. Nothing new to speak about. The very important thing here is speaking skill. That is so very important in today's life. We have to make sure that we build and develop speaking skill in our students, because they have to speak about the ongoing things that is happening wrong, or rather right, around them or in their own lives. Listening skills could be developed through various activities like oral comprehension. There are several books also available. Comprehension, conversation books are available. So listening skills, and there are a lot of websites already available. If you just have a look on Google, a lot of websites are there where you can develop your listening activities, and paragraphs are there, and then MCQ questions are there, vocabulary questions are there. A lot of questions are there where listening skills could be developed. We always traditionally think that we have to read out a lesson and then frame questions, and then the students listening skill would be developed. But as the world is changing, as this is innovation is now the mode of the world, a lot of websites are also working on listening skill, and they have also come up with good passages with wonderful MCQs, that evoke such responses that we are looking at, that we are aiming for. And of course, the reading. The very basic one that we have already spoken about, the strategies, the text that they're reading. Writing is also very important. Speaking and writing come together. And when you read a lot, when you listen a lot, you are able to speak and you are able to write well. So they all go hand in hand. One is input and the other is output that you are giving out to the world. Next is whatever we are doing, the lesson activities that we are undertaking, or the skills, the strategies that we are incorporating. We have some target productive skills that we are aiming at. So a daily reading habit is a must to be able to give a response for a student. If a student is not reading a text, no matter how many questions you put up on the board, the child is not going to answer. To get that answer, the child has to incorporate a daily reading habit of minimum 15 minutes, though 20 is suggested. But in practicality, I'm telling you from my own personal experiences, students do not want to read. So a minimum of daily 15-minute reading habit is a must. You could also ask them to watch videos on YouTube and BBC News, where the speaking skills could be developed. So once these reading of the text is done, that ability can be that can be, tested in reading or in of the chosen text that you have taken up through the questions, the MCQ in these online times. More relatable and more doable things are MCQs. And also, if you see, ICSE now has taken up no written answers. They all MCQ, no paragraph answers, no short answers, all MCQs. So you could test the reading, and also for reading text, reading comprehension. There are wonderful websites like read.activelylearn.com or read theory or commonlit.com. There are several websites available where they give out a passage and MCQ questions are there, and the teachers just have to assign them to that classroom on the Google Classroom, and then the students read them, do the MCQ questions, and then the teachers can grade, or they are automatically also graded. The responses that you want to evoke from students, those could be written or oral, in the form of written or oral. Now that we are living in the on the online teaching mode, we are having that from the past 2 years. So written assignments is a little difficult practically, being a teacher myself. But a short paragraph for specific questions could be given. Like we just discussed earlier, if you're reading scientific fiction or any genre story, you can ask them to write a short paragraph for you. So writing a short paragraph of 5 to 6 or maximum 10 lines could give you an insight of their understanding. Now, oral skills is also one of the major targets that we are aiming at when we are doing these literature courses. And they can be tested in discussions, classroom discussions, debate, research, presentation. Now, one very important thing, once you give students research and presentation, what happens is that they have a tendency of copy pasting. So that can be checked also. You have a Viva where they speak in 3 minutes or 2 minutes, whatever is suited to you, and they summarize the entire project that is done for you, the thesis, their research, whatever you have given. So even though they are copy pasted or somebody has helped them, they are able to tell in their own words. And that is so important, that so there's a fear because I have to answer the Viva, the oral question. So I better not take too much of help or depend too much on copying verbatim. Next is the competencies. When we are doing over a 6-month course or a 3-month course or a 1-year course, what are we aiming at? What is our objective for doing all this that we are doing? Reading strategies, we are having lesson activities, we have planned a curriculum where we are having 30, 25, accordingly, whatever your time permits you. You have these lessons. What are you aiming at? At the end, can your students write and speak accurately and clearly? Now, there are always cases, but majorly average, on an average in a classroom, can students write and speak accurately and clearly? Can students write and speak persuasively about a text? That is the argumentation skill. Literary competence. Do students show awareness of the literary features of a text? Now, literary features I'll be delving deep into a little later. Life competencies also that I want to harp upon here, and that can students recognize and learn from the life situations of a text? This is so very important, because whenever you plan your curriculum, or you do your macro planning, when you're selecting chapters for your course of a year, make sure you already know the chapters beforehand. You already know those texts beforehand. You already know what values are you trying to give out to students from each lesson that you are going to teach them, so that they recognize those life situations there in the text, and they're aware of that, and they use them, or somewhere they take hint from that in their personal life. And that is so important. Value is very important. I repeat myself, it's very important in today's time. We have seen students, we have seen people, why only students, we have seen people speaking and writing so well, so highly educated, but they lack in value. So value based teaching is very, very important. When you are planning your lesson, make sure you have a separate corner for identifying the value of the lesson that you are going to teach. Now, WHO call life skills a core of set skills, needed to promote the health of children and adolescents. In today's time, if we see the upgradation that has happened in the syllabi in the country, they are all looking for life skills. Earlier, we were tested on, I remember in my time, hardly anyone was interested in skills, and we were always asked knowledge based questions. What was the color of his shirt, or how many toy did he carry? Why based question, how based question, knowledge application based question, understanding based question. The weightage to them was very less, and the weightage to knowledge based question, what was the color of the desk in his bedroom, why is it so important to me today after 20 years down the line? Why do I need to know which color shirt did he wear? But if I was made to think, why did he choose that color, what is this symbol, why didn't he choose a pink over a blue or a black? Those sort of critical thinking could be evoked in children. Broadly, they are categorized. Life skills are broadly categorized into logic, communication, emotion. Under logic is creativity, analyzing and synthesizing information that you get, problem solving, critical thinking, decision making. This is so much our area. Communication, verbal communication, speech, fluency and expression, written communication, letters being sent out to official people if you want to complain about something, the body language and how you talk to people, and of course emotion. That is so very important, and under that comes empathy, personal responsibilities, social responsibility and citizenship, collaboration and working as a team. These skills are so important, and these skills are acquired. These skills are practiced on a daily basis, and so are lessons. Our lessons should integrate activities that build and develop these life skills, so that our children and adolescents are healthy. Now, coming to literary and linguistic comprehension. Basically, when we read a text, the comprehension of any text exists in two different levels. One is linguistic comprehension, understanding, linguistic comprehension, and literary comprehension. Linguistic comprehension is nothing but the process of interpreting and understanding and telling in your own words, and the words that are written there, the words that you hear. This is linguistic comprehension. Whether you're understanding what I am saying, interpreting, or if you're reading, whether you're understanding, that is linguistic comprehension. And this should not be underestimated in any child. Then is literary comprehension or the cultural comprehension. These are the sophisticated levels of English. And these includes elements of a story. Now, when we come to elements of a story, Let me first, there in when we do a text, there could be poems, we could be dealing with a short story, we could be dealing with an essay or anything. Coming to giving you a little knowledge, though we do not have much time to talk, because English is a sea of knowledge. So much is there to talk about, and it cannot be wrapped up in within such limited time. So just giving you a basic idea of what is this. So when a child is asked to write a critical appreciation, so what are the things you should be looking at? And there elements of a poem is checked whether he has understood that, and elements of a poem will be so useful when he's doing critical appreciation. So there, in order to write a critical appreciation of any poem, the child could look at the theme, that is the message of the poem or the central idea of the entire text, how the poet has expressed that idea through the words, the chosen words, the objects in the piece, the rhyme, the stanza, the rhythm, the stanza, the syllable, the color used in the poem. Every color has a symbol. The poetic devices. Now, this is a C. Literary devices, poetic devices. This is a different category. But if there are few, like simile, metaphor, alteration, and onomatopoeia, all these things are there. Some few of them are there. Then you identify them. Mood. How is the reader feeling upon reading that text? Tone, that the words used by the author to write the text. Contrast, comparisons, repetition that is used to emphasize a point, and so many other things. If you write one line about all this, you are writing a critical appreciation. That means you are analyzing the poem. At the end, you could give a personal opinion on what part of the poem you like the best. Also, parts you did not find impressive in the poem. Of course, that is your opinion. You don't have to like every piece. What you liked, what you did not like. If you do this, your critical appreciation is basically done. And that is the elements of a poem. When we are doing any story or any prose, the first thing that we should be looking at, or rather, we should have a chart like this in the classroom, and already there. And when we are picking up a prose or a story, we should ask our students, identify before even we restart, or give them a 5 minutes to just skim through the story and tell you which genre does this story belong to, whether it is realistic fiction or historical fiction or fantasy or mystery or science fiction. Is it a poetry or a drama, adventure story? What is it, a biography or an autobiography? There are so many things. Let them tell you. You don't tell them beforehand or in the beginning. What we are going to read is this. Let them tell you. And then they just told you, and you don't tell them whether it is right or wrong. Then the reading of the text happens. And then they identify whether it was actually a mystery story or a realistic fiction. Also, the features, these genres have features. So features of each genre could be shared. If not all at the beginning, that is not wise. So for example, the teacher knows that I'll be doing a science fiction now. So features of science fiction could be shared. And then students could be asked, you identify those features in the story. Another very important task that I'm reminded of right now is doing a genre identification before you start with any story of your book. So you give them paragraphs from every genre. That is all available online. Give them paragraphs of every genre and tell them, and give them just these words: fantasy, realistic fiction, mystery, science fiction, this and this, and tell them to identify these paragraphs fall under which genre. And then tell them to guess the words and underline the words. Why did you think this piece or this 5 line is an example of science fiction? Let them guess those words. And later on, when you do a science fiction, you tell them the features of science fiction. And they know that. And then after they have done that, or you could even do just a paragraph, a setting of a science fiction. And then later, instead of answering who, why, knowledge-based question, where was this alien born, why did he go there, ask them to write a short paragraph, just a setting of science fiction. or just a setting of a mystery story, or just a setting of a fantasy story, and that could also be very wise. So you know what could be done, several activities. So for example, in one text, you are doing questions, that is why, how, all these based making connection questions, RTC and all that. In some chapter, you are just asking them to write the setting of a story. You have read a science fiction story. Now, write for me a setting of another science fiction story. In another, you could tell them to write the description of an imaginary character. So they touch upon every something in all the chapters, and when you club them together, everything is done. Don't do everything in one chapter, or don't continue to do question answers in every chapter. Do discuss major questions, important questions, but then aim for everything, because though we have 1 year, we do not have too much of time even in that 1 year, because you have classes and there are several other classes also. So see that every aspect is touched upon when we are teaching. The next is elements of a story. Now, earlier we did elements of a poem, now elements of a story, telling you in very brief. One very important thing that I just want to share with you here is that when we are doing any reading of a text in class, make sure the children have a pencil in their hand, and language is not different from literature. So make them, tell them beforehand, as you read, you underline the phrases, underline, bracket the setting of the story, bracket wherever you find a new character, underline, wherever you have a description of the character, bracket, wherever you find a new idiom, underline. So as they are reading the story, their language, the vocabulary is also developing, and they can have their own bank, they can have their own diary where they can put these and file them, and then see at the end of the year how many new words that they have come across, or idioms that they have come across, or good phrases that they have come across, because they are reading some 20 to 30 pieces every year, and they're repeating the same words the next year, because they are not creating a bank of their own. So if that could be created and asked to submit, and ask them to maintain that and submit it to you, and then take it away, take it with them. So a bank is created every year, and these are very vital banks. These are not money banks, but a very vital bank, vocabulary bank is created. Okay, now coming under elements of the story, as we do a story, we should identify the setting of the story, where the story is set, the time, place, the atmosphere, the weather, the characters, gray characters, positive character, evil characters, the major characters, the minor character, plot. Now plot has several division. Under plot is your exposition, there comes setting, then is your rising action, that is your climax, then is your falling action, then is your resolution or the solution of the story. Then is conflict. Conflict is the problem. Without problem, there is no story. Ask them to identify the problem in the story. What is the conflict in the story? It could be there in the beginning, it could be there in the middle. What is the central idea, the theme, the message that the writer is trying to give away? There is no piece where the writer is not willing to say something. We all want to say something. There is one reason why even we are having this session today. So what is the theme of the lesson that they are reading? POV is the point of view, for first person, second person, or third person point of view. In which point of view the text is written? I, you, or he has done that, or I have done that. Which point of view? Identification of that is also very necessary. Tone is the words that is used by the author, and the negative words or positive words. Also tell students about the negative words, about the positive words, or the neutral words, identification of those words, and that is the tone of the story. Mood is what is created by the reader, how you feel upon reading the text. Style is again a part of tone only. So these are in just the main elements of the story which should be identified when we are doing any story. And genre along with this is so important that we have done in the beginning. Now, since we have not too much of, because I don't want to tell too much at one time, little bit getting into language. As we discussed right now, that language is not separate from literature. as they are doing. And for example, if you are doing adverbs in your language, for example, these are the basic that even books that we have grown up with. We have one even if you take up Oxford or several book, they have one chapter on these grammar topics like adjective, pronoun, punctuation, adverb, verbs, tenses, and these and that. And they are not taught on a daily basis, but one chapter done, for example, in the month of April, punctuations, and then it is not done at all, not touched at all. And then you are testing the child on punctuation after 6 months or maybe after 2 months, and you expect the child to remember everything that you taught them in April. The child is expected to be a genius, even though you are not touching upon that topic every day. And that is what is there, the structure of every language book that we have come across and we have grown up with. But I want to suggest one book by Usha Pandit, and that is Language with Ease, where something that I have liked so much, and that is, sentences. Even though if you are doing any general book that you are following in your own school, which has one lesson, punctuation, and then you have these lessons and they are not touched upon, what could be done is that a sentence, a complex sentence, could be given to them twice a week. A sentence of 3-4 lines, a complex sentence or a compound complex sentence could be given to them, and 3-4-5 questions could be asked on that. Identify these sort of questions are there in this book that I'm referring to, Language with Ease by Usha Pandit. You could ask children to underline the verbs there, punctuate the sentence. So even though you have done that punctuation 2 months back earlier, but then you are touching that every week, so child has not forgotten that. So frequency is there. Frequency is there. How frequently you are touching upon that topic. So even though you have done direct indirect speech in class 5, and now you are in class 7, and that is not my topic, even though a topic is there in my book, but that is there, I did it in the month of May, but now I'm in November, and I expect my child to know that what I have done 6 months back. But if I have given my child a question on direct and indirect speech, reported verb, reported speech every week, 2 sentences, and ask them to change this into reported speech, then the frequency, the child will be doing it frequently, so the child will be able to remember that, and a lot of volume will be created. So a child has done, for example, if 2 sentences, such complex sentences in 1 week, the child would end up doing 10 in 5 days a week. 5 and 10 times he has changed active voice to a passive voice, identified the transitive verbs. He has changed from direct speech to indirect. 10 times he has done the punctuation of the sentence. So what is happening? It is being touched upon, and the knowledge is fresh because the practice is happening daily. And so now, even if you are testing the child after 2 months, there's no problem. The practice is happening twice a week. Okay, so that is the small thing that could be done. And this is an innovation which, of course, because we are upgrading our own skills as a teacher also. And so these are the new things that I have come across, which I wanted you to share with you, because earlier we were also doing the same thing of doing one topic and then not touching that. And so as we are evolving, we are changing our methods and our ways of teaching. And so how we taught 10 years back is, of course, now not how we teach today. Of course, there is a basic thing there, but then there is a transformation, there's a gradual transformation for the betterment. I would keep it till here today. And now over to you, Zainab ma'am. I would not delve deep and take your much time. Zainab ma'am. Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an amazing and interesting session. Each and every point that you stated must have made some impact on my teacher. I am not a pro English or an English teacher, but still, I found these tips that you gave applicable to other subjects as well. And like telling the children beforehand what we expect from them is a very interesting and amazing technique, and we often call it rubrics also. So we provide the children like we are expecting this from you, so they prepare accordingly, and it helps them to perform better. And the best thing I liked about your presentation was the in the last, that when you told us about this thing, that you keep practicing the things that you have taught your children in some way or the other, which helps them to remember it, and help them to recall it, and use it in their day to day life, help them to ask them to maintain a repository of words. We used to do this, we used to make our own dictionary in like long back when I was in school. We were asked by
Wow.
our English teacher to maintain a dictionary of ours. So it's just like a nostalgic thing for me to remember, like maintaining a dictionary, doing things, knowing, like it would have been very nice in our time also if we would have known what our teacher exactly want from us, and we could have written better answers, scored better scores. But now, as things are advancing and our teachers are the like teacher community is also understanding the needs of the student, they are providing to children with all these facilities. So it was a very interesting and amazing session. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so
And I
much.
would
Thank you
like
so
to
much.
request my audience to please post their questions in the comment box, so that our dear speaker can answer you as and when she gets time to look into these questions. You can post your questions uh, right now, or maybe whenever you see this talk, and ma'am will answer it surely. So with this, we come to an end of our session. Uh, Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank
Thank you
you,
so
my
much,
dear
Zainab ma'am.
audience.
My
Okay,
pleasure.
ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.